Good evening, everybody, and welcome to winconductor.org's Maestro Moments. Super excited about tonight's guest. I've been following his work for quite some time. Every time I go to his conferences, go to his clinics at conferences, I always leave a better person. So super excited to be talking to Scott Rush tonight. In our pre-show conversation, we just kind of started digging into some different ideas, and I know that you guys are going to be blessed with tonight's show. Joining me tonight also and helping me out with things is my partner in crime, Josh Savanovich. Josh, come on. How are you, sir?
I'm doing all right. It's July.
Yeah. So I know tonight's show is going to be great. I mean, that conversation we were having with Scott right before we came on was I learned a lot, and it's just a lot of wisdom there that I'm looking forward to sharing with the audience and stuff. So this year, 2020, 2021 school year is behind us. Thank God. I think all of us are glad to see that thing go. What are some of the things that you're looking to do with your program this year to kind of jumpstart things? And have you started kind of digging into that a little bit?
It just felt really good at the beginning of the summer to sit down and like plan out a performance calendar again. It felt really nice just to like say, this is when we're going to try to have a winter concert. This is when we're trying to have a fall concert, pre-MPA events, about clinicians and festival and, talking to folks about hosting all district again and just trying to get back to, making music and having band be, what we all love and what we all do is something that I'm really excited about. And the farther we've gotten into summer, the more I've had to sort of temper that and just, pump the brakes a little bit, because it's great to be excited about it, but I have to manage those expectations for myself so I can be certain I can manage them appropriately for my students. And I think that's one of the things I'm really, really excited about when we talk with Scott later, is to talk and to think more about, this year maybe being about rekindling some of that relationship spark and taking the opportunity to sort of reestablish what our program can be and what we want our program to be, because we're starting with almost 50% of our kids, are brand new to our room.
Yeah.
So it's a unique opportunity, I think, that we have in front of us.
Yeah, and I'm in the same boat. I really think that in some ways, last year was almost like it sucked, but it was almost a time for us to kind of forcing us to take a step back and breathe a little bit and kind of take this moment to reevaluate where we are with our programs and look to the future with developing, where we want to go in the future and everything. All right. So tonight's guest, you know him as the author of the Habit series on GIA. I love his book. I didn't show him this, but I got my book here, and it is filled with all kinds of notes and stuff. I went to town when I was reading through that book. So super excited to kind of dig into him. He's also the former band director of Wando High School, which was it still is a phenomenal. Scotty Lambert's the band director down there. Now, phenomenal program under his direction. They were BOA Grand finalists, Grand National finalists, and they also performed at Midwest in 2007. They were the recipient of the Sudler Flag. Just a phenomenal band program. So we got a quick word from our sponsor, Amano Music, and right after that, we're going to bring on Scott Rush. Looking forward to it.
WinConductor.org's Maestro Moments is brought to you tonight through the support of Amano Music. Amano Music is a collective for composers and a resource to band directors. Find the very best in wind band repertoire, from classic marches, updated and edited for contemporary wind ensembles, to the latest from innovative independent composers like the piece you're listening to right now, Chatterbox by Jason Christian. You will also find resources for the band classroom, including books on topics important to band directors, as well as methods like mastering the scales to prepare your band to tackle rigorous repertoire. You can find Amano Music by visiting their website at www.amanomusic.com. That's Amano Music with a double A.
Maestro, welcome to whenconducted.org and our Maestro Moments. So happy to have you, Scott Rush.
Well, first of all, Aaron, thank you so much for the kind invitation to be with you this evening. I'm honored to be with you. And if our conversation before we started was any indication, I'm just excited about our collaboration and collaborative time together.
Yeah, me too. I tell everybody, I started these programs so that we can kind of get a glimpse at some of the greats that we meet at the conference. Just kind of in a more casual setting, just as a general conversation, get to know them a little bit better. And I do it for everybody that has watched these videos, and I'm so grateful for the people that have watched them. But I have to admit, I am doing it for selfish reasons also, so that I can grow as a band director and learn as much as I can from the people like yourself that have gone before us and developed these phenomenal programs to try to glean some of your knowledge and start implementing little pieces of it into my band program. I do like to get to know our guests a little bit, and because we do see you as Scott Rush, the author, Scott Rush, the band director of this phenomenal program at Wando. But maybe take us back a little bit. In some of your books, you talk about some of your experiences younger in life and stuff like that. But, what was your background? Maybe when we were talking with Alfred Watkins a few interviews back, he was actually telling us his start with music, how he got started in music. Maybe how did you get started in band?
Well, it's interesting. So my older brother was in band. And so from a really early age, I went to band concerts.
Nice.
And my dad always had music playing in the house. And so, one of my brothers and my sister both played guitar. And so we sang all the time. I started playing ukulele at age 4. And I went to my first orchestra concert at age 12. And that was really cool simply because on that concert, there was a soloist, a violin soloist, David Kim, who was also 12. And I remember I had started playing French horn and went to the orchestra concert. He played this concerto. And I remember leaving that orchestra concert going, if he's 12 and I'm 12, I really need to go home and do some practicing. And so that was kind of, transformative for me. But I grew up in a musical household, knew pretty early on that I actually wanted to be a band director. But I had some folks who actually steered me away from that. I won't go into the long version of the story, but they kind of steered me away from that. And I got to a particular point in my career where Gary Gribble, who's the band director at Pope High School at the time, asked me one time, he said, what is it that you really want to do? And I said, I really want to be a band director. And he and I started a conversation about that. And I guess the rest is history, because when I stepped into the classroom, I just felt at home, and I felt like that was my calling and that was my passion. Now, we all have those challenging first years.
Yeah.
But every second in front of young people, I just cherish it.
Yeah. Now, as far as band director as a career, but you're actually a very you're an accomplished French hornist as well. You've had some really cool experiences as a performer, right?
I was very fortunate that I went to New England Conservatory of Music and had so many incredible people there to study with. My principal horn teacher was Chuck Kavalowski, who was principal horn of the Boston Symphony. And then, of course, I got a chance to study with Frank Battisti in the wind ensemble, which is amazing. And then also with people like Carl St. Clair and Pascal Varot and Ben Zander, and just some wonderful people. And so, I actually left school and played professionally, and also did some adjunct horn teaching on the university level. But it was actually during that time when I was like, and I remember even at the conservatory telling my roommate's girlfriend, whose dad was a band director, I remember us having a meal, and I said, I really just want to be a band director. And so that's, like I said, the rest is history, because when I got in front of young people, I was able to make music and, see the light bulbs go on. That was just transformative for me.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about your entrance into the music ed field. What was that first gig that you had, and what was the program like? What were some things that you learned in those early couple years?
So it was interesting. My first job was a combination middle school, high school job in Newberry, South Carolina. But the thing that was so unique about that job was that I was co-teaching with a legend. Her name was Lorraine Paris, and she was the matriarch of band directors, and she was at that school for 47 years.
Oh, wow.
At the same school for 47 years. And I totally learned so much about culture and about relationships. And I got a chance to see how she totally influenced the community. Wow. And it really was pretty amazing. I remember one time a clarinet player came into the office and she had done something she should not have done. And Lorraine Paris looked at her and she said, "I taught your mother, and I know that your mother would not." And then she stopped and she said, "Wait a minute. I taught your grandmother, and I know your mother would not approve of your behavior." And it was kind of at that moment where I went like, okay, I kind of get this, culture thing, and how, if you create the right culture, that it really, the word legacy and significance, where that comes from. And then, I was there for 7 years, and then I went to Wando High School for 15 years, which was incredible. The person who was there before me, Miller Asbel, had done a fantastic job at Wando. And that was actually interesting because at my first teaching situation, I learned a ton about culture, and there was lots of room for musical growth. When I got to Wando initially, there was lots of room for culture growth, but the program was in a pretty good place musically, and it was just a matter of taking it where it was and moving the needle. So I was very fortunate to not only teach with people, but follow people who were really good at their craft, and I learned a ton.
Yeah. So in addition to building the program at Wando into a nationally recognized ensemble, getting invitations to, it's the most prestigious events that an American high school can be invited to. You kind of grown into another role as an author of the Habits Theory series with GIA. How did that kind of come about, and what was it that kind of drew you in that direction?
Well, they're very much related. And before I answer that question, let me say this too. When you quote unquote build a program, it's not one person. Right. It's a team of people that all come together collectively. And so we had wonderful middle school feeders. We had an incredible staff of people. Jeff Handel and Lainey Radicke, who are currently at Wando, were there when I was there, and Sean McGrew. We just had a great team of people. So there was a lot of things that kind of came together to make for a good thing. And, a standard of excellence was really something that was important in that program. I'll tell you, I'm a firm believer in the statement, they don't care how much you know, so they know how much you care. And one of the things in the Wando program that we did, along with, great music making, and we evolved to a place where, I was very fortunate that we could make music at a high level. We did something on Wednesday afternoons that I think was pretty fundamentally, when I look back at it, I realized just how important it was. And we did something called freshman interviews. And it was where if you were a freshman in the program or you were new to the program, you would come in on Wednesday afternoon. I would meet with you individually for about 15 or 20 minutes. We'd start right after school. And I would always start the conversation with, if we're going to spend the next 4 years together, I truly want to get to know you. And then my words and actions had to bear that out. But I would ask them questions like, where do you see yourself 10 years from now? Where do you see yourself 5 years from now? What's the best vacation you ever taken with your family? Who's your favorite musical artist? I would even ask them some silly questions like, if we go to a car dealership and I will buy you any car that you wanted, money is no object, what kind of car would you buy? and it would tell me something about their personality. You know, they were right at that age where they had about a year before they were going to get a car or be able to drive. So, you know, but the biggest statement was, we're going to spend the next 4 years together. I truly want to get to know you. Yeah. So because of that, we had an over 97% retention rate in the program. And I think the freshman use had a lot to do with it. And so consequently, because of the work that was happening at Wando, we were in a situation where we were growing musically, and the GIA thing happened this way. It's kind of interesting. Tim Lotzenheiser was coming every year to do student leadership workshops at our school. And one year I picked Tim up at the airport, and we were driving in the car, and we were talking about student teachers, because I had a student teacher at the time, and Tim had just spent the day observing student teachers because he was, I don't remember if he was at Vandercook or Duquesne or somewhere, but anyway, he was at observing student teachers, and we were sharing, you know, student teacher stories. And he said, you should write a book. And, you know, I thought, well, this is Tim just making everybody feel good about themselves, because, you know, Tim has a gift of doing that. And so several months later, I saw Tim in a different setting, and he said, where's that book? And I said, are you serious? He goes, yes, I'm serious. And so I said, if I write a book, will you write the foreword to the book? And he said, not only will I write the foreword to the book, he said, I'll make sure it gets published. And it started with a company that he owned called Focus on Excellence. And we published the book. It was a spiral bound book. It was the Habits of Successful Band Director book. But we sold about 1,000 copies right off the bat.
Wow.
And so he called me and said, I'd like to call Alec Harris at GIA and see if he would pick up the book. GIA has a better opportunity to distribute the book. People are kind of gravitating towards the book. And so, you know, do you mind if I call Alec Harris? And so Tim called Alec. And then 5 minutes later, Alec called me and said, you know, we'd like to pick up this book, and, you know, we'd like to develop a relationship with you through this book. And I obviously accepted the gracious offer. And after that book, you know, did well, then we just started looking at other projects. And so now we have 14 books in the series. There are, you know, how-to book, what we call how-to books, like Habits of Successful Band Director and Habits of Significant Band Director. And, you know, we have method books as well. We have books for band, choir, and orchestra. Tim Lotzenheiser and I did a book together called Pathway to Success, Habits for Creating a Culture of Excellence. We just released a new beginner band method book this past year that's doing really well. We had, well, there you go. There are several of those titles. We had about, from what we can tell, about 900 programs, middle school programs this past year use Habits of Successful Beginner Band Musician.
Wow.
Our latest beginner band method book. And that's been really successful. So our Habits mission starts with the words one team. And then the mission is to provide teachers and students valuable resources that will help create a collaborative environment for music making and connect teachers and students in a significant way through music love, passion, vision, and purpose. So that's kind of our mission and our vision. And I have felt very fortunate to be in a position where we feel like we can help teachers and then exponentially help students.
Yeah, no. So I want to, you know, one of the reasons I brought you on is because, and I mentioned this in the intro, you know, I think every band director in the world is very thankful to see the 2020-21 school year in the rearview mirror. However, I think in a lot of ways it has presented us with a phenomenal opportunity of self-reflection, and you know, an opportunity for us to make changes that we may not have made going into 2020. So you know, I'd like to kind of, you know, I mentioned this when we spoke before about, and I'm going to bring Josh on to join the conversation. You know, I think in hearing the conversations in the chat rooms and on the Facebook groups and stuff like that, you know, retention and recruitment are on the minds, and retention especially this year coming on. But in our conversation, there was a recurring theme that kind of came up in some of the in your whole story. You started talking about your relationship with your first band position, and how you learned the importance of the relationship with the community. You talked about the relationship when you got into your own program and growing that with Wando, the relationship with the faculty and staff that work with you towards the goal of making that opportunity. And then you talked about the relationships that you developed with your freshmen and stuff like that. And I'd love to me, listening to you talk through that, that seemed like a recurring theme that kind of came up with a lot of what you were just discussing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that, first of all, as music educators, we're kind of constantly reinventing ourselves.
Yeah.
If we're throwing a curveball, we generally have a solution. It's like, okay, you've given me this, I'm going to turn the lemons into lemonade, and this is just how we function. And I think that's really, a good trait for us because we're creative people. And, we're too creative to say that a model of success looks like this. And when we've learned, the old model, and maybe the old model has some inherent flaws to it, especially with regard to time and time management, work-life balance. So I think that it's really important for this year, for everybody to realize we're at a different place on the track, and that's okay. And even the barometer and the bar may be at a little bit different place, but that's okay. And the first thing that needs to happen is to create and build a culture in a community, in my opinion. And I think, just like I talked about the freshman interviews just a minute ago, we had an over 97% retention rate for about a 10-year period at Wando. And I think it was based on relationships. And so I think as we move forward, I think it's going to be really important to talk about things. Well, Tim and I wrote this book called Pathway to Success: Habits for Creating a Culture of Excellence in Band, Choir, and Orchestra. And the model is basically a mountain, and the baseline is communication down at the bottom. And then as you move your way up the metaphorical mountain, it's attitude, honesty, integrity, trust, self-discipline, emotional health, goal setting, relationships, cooperation, loyalty, selflessness, creating a culture of excellence, in the moonshot. And those are all the things in the model. And I really think that right now it's important, first and foremost. My son is in band, and he calls it his tribe. Right. And I think it's really important to truly connect the tribe. And I think there will be time, and we never want to abandon the pure joy of music making. And I always say we're in the music business and the people business, and you don't have to pick one over the other. But I think at the beginning, we've got to create a culture where students kind of say, I need my tribe right now. And it's okay if, as the director, to kind of take a step back and be a little bit more reflective and, temper the expectations of what you have, knowing that you want to create a culture, you want to build a culture, you want to build a program, and you also want to do that with good fundamentals in place. And I think there are some kind of true things that need to happen. But at the end of the day, it's, I say it's this. I actually believe that the music making has more depth to it when the group of people who are doing it have done this. And I think COVID in some respects has pulled us apart a little bit. And we're trying to find ourselves to create this again. And I even share with you, I'll share with everybody else, I shared with you before we got on, even my own son, during COVID, they didn't have a normal marching band season last year. And so they had a very, very short, not time-consuming marching band season because of COVID. He has a job at Chick-fil-A. He's been working a lot this summer. And he came to me and he said, Dad, what if I just don't do marching band this year? and just continue to work because he kind of got used to working. And I talked to another band director earlier this week that was having some of the same issues. And I told my son, Thomas, I said, Thomas, I said, one of the things that has happened is that we've kind of pulled this apart and people are starting to think about I, me, and not think about we, us.
Right.
And what I told him was that there are people, meaning his directors, who have invested in him personally and have made a difference in his life. And because of that there's an obligation to give back to creating that we, us culture again. And I talked to him about how instrumental he could be in creating that we, us culture. And after we had a fairly short conversation about it, and it wasn't, he kind of was contemplative for a second, and he goes, you're right. They have given a lot to me. They have invested in me. It is important to get the tribe back together and to create that culture of excellence again. And I really can help. And I was like, yep, you're right.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of directors are kind of, dealing with that. The other thing I would say, I think it's okay for this year initially to pick literature that is easier than maybe you would normally pick, and just allow students to be musical. And the ideas of, full ensemble concepts like balance and blend and tuning are not going to be as good. Right. Seriously, they're just not. And a lot of the kids coming up into high school, have only had at most a year and a half of real instruction for band. And so all those things we have to take into consideration. And we may have realized during COVID too that the old model is not sustainable from a time commitment standpoint as well.
Right.
I think things that we've learned, and I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I mentioned this to you before. I think there's some quality of life things, meaning work-life balance things that came out during COVID that we really should discuss, because I think that we have a different perspective about time right now, and there's some ways that we can be more efficient. There's some ways that we can be more effective. I think we can reinvent ourselves in terms of delegating responsibilities. I think that there are, if quality of life decisions or work-life balance decisions are at the forefront of our thoughts. Now, let me say this too. Quality of life decisions are not designed, or action steps for quality of life decisions are not designed to get us out of work. They are designed to make us more efficient. But what they are designed to do is to create a long, prosperous career as a music educator, because our students deserve a music educator in front of them who has had a long, prosperous career and can make a difference in their life, as opposed to people who burn out after 3 or 4 years because they didn't have quality of life issues at the forefront of their thoughts, and they emptied their cup so much there was nothing left in the cup, and so there was nothing left for them to give. And of course, this year was a tough year for people to make decisions about, their career, because it was such an unusual career. So, I always say that we should create action steps, and the action steps should be really in 4 categories. They should be, for your family, for your spouse, for your workplace, and for yourself. Yeah. And if you can create action steps and quality of life strategies for that, I think that also has a place when we talk about reinventing ourselves for COVID, in my opinion.
No, there's a lot there, and I want to unpack quite a bit of it. I'd like to go back just a little bit, because Josh, you were talking about this earlier in our pre-show conversation about the expectations of coming into this year, and not saying that we lower our expectations, in the long term. We still have those things that we want our students to be able to accomplish and everything. But you have some thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, I think it's important that for our students, yeah, if you have a program where kids are walking in and expecting to play grade 6 literature from day one, it's going to be a bit of a rude awakening when they sit down in that first rehearsal and they realize that half that group does not remember what a balanced ensemble. They're not aware of those ensemble responsibilities that we couldn't replicate when we're doing Zoom rehearsals. And so being able to find music that they can connect to and can be challenged by, but in a realistic and pedagogically sound manner, I think is going to be one of those things that's going to be really important for us. And it also got me thinking, my school, we don't have a competitive marching band. We play at football games, Friday nights, we do parades, but that allows me the opportunity to do a lot of adjudication during the marching season. So that's gotten me, Aaron and I were talking the other week about, how do we have a competitive show on these sheets when we're still talking about the basic, expectations and the basic fundamentals of musicianship again. And I think that's going to be another way that we can help each other out, is as adjudicators or as visitors to other band rooms, be really considerate about the things that we are saying to one another. Maybe this is not the point to nitpick the fact that the flute over here and the trumpet over here were slightly out of tune, even though they were 20 yards apart from each other. Maybe that's not the most important thing. That's not the time to show off how good your ears are, Judge. Let's talk about reward the things that they're doing well while providing feedback on how to continue growing on those things that are going to help the overall program and not maybe just that one thing.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, I think we should also stop and just say, and just having a true appreciation, because we really don't know how this year is going to unfold. But for every moment that we have where we get the chance to make music, we should just celebrate that and celebrate the pure joy of having the ability to do that.
Amen.
When I do guest conducting, sometimes I used to tell this fictitious story about a young lady who woke up on Saturday morning and she went to get her phone and she was going to turn on her playlist, and it said on her iPhone, no music available. And then after she got out of the shower, she decided that she was going to, turn on a stereo that she had in her room, and, nothing worked. And so then she went and got in her car and she turned on the radio, and it was all talk radio. Nothing against talk radio, but it was all talk radio. So she went to her movie and she sat down in her seat, and the trailer came on, and she realized there was no music soundtrack. There was no sound effects. It was all just verbiage. And I used to tell that story, and it's kind of interesting because I'm teaching a class right now, and one of their assignments this week was to read that story and to reflect on comparing that story to COVID. And it was a really interesting conversation that we had, to say we really couldn't fathom. It was almost like a science fiction movie. We really couldn't fathom somebody coming along and saying, you can't perform together. You can't make music together. And so because of that, the idea this year that just to celebrate the pure joy of being together and making music, there's something to be said for that, I think. I also believe that you talk about marching band. I believe that it's okay to have a more limited schedule, and like I said, and just build the harmony, build the culture. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I could follow up just one thing, Scott, how do we, without being, because we can get on the podium. I am certainly guilty of this, and eulogize and talk for ages. I'm very good at talking. My kids know it, and people who know me know that. But how do we get the students to appreciate that fact that, guys, we are having a rehearsal in person? We are making musical and ensemble decisions again in person. How can we, because we've been doing this for years, we know what that was like to have that suddenly ripped away. But for some of these kids, maybe they did it for 3 years. It was a part of their life. They liked band. Freshman year was not what they wanted. They're going to try it one more time sophomore year. How do we get them to sort of understand what we're feeling? How do we convey that without just telling them?
Well, yeah, I think there's two parts to that. Really three parts to that. I think the first thing is that, their fire is not going to be lit unless our fire is lit. In other words,
Right.
we have to be passionate about music and music making because, and we have to make sure that our fire is lit for their fire to be possibly lit. I think the other thing is students, a lot of times, they don't truly appreciate things until after they leave us. And they have to get a little bit more wisdom, but they can live in the moment. And at some point, I think they will reflect. I got an email this week from a young lady who we had done in marching band, and the same year we had done a snippet of the Barber Adagio for strings. And we also did a transcription of the Barber Adagio for strings. And I also encouraged all of them to make sure it was on their playlist, the Barber Adagio for strings. It was almost like a unit, like I wanted them to acquaint themselves with that. And this young lady, she's been graduated many years. So she put something on Facebook, and her mom actually sent me a Facebook message first and said, you need to check out Jennifer's Facebook message. And the mom, thanked me or whatever. And then I read hers. And basically it was, she had been going through some personal issues, and she gravitated to the Barber Adagio for strings, and, how healing it was, and how she then reflected on her experiences in high school and why it was so important to play high quality music. And so I made a little comment, back to her on Facebook, and she basically sent back something that said, thank you so much for making it important for us to play high quality music in the program, because it's music that has resonated with me, throughout my life. Because, at the end of the day, we want them to fall in love with music and music making, but we also know that very few of them are actually going to continue playing. I mean, that's a reality. But all of them have the ability to resonate with music. So I think this is an opportunity to talk about the idea of resonating with music because of this experience, and maybe even say to them, you may not get this right now, but I think, in future years, you will get it. I'll tell you, another interesting story about that. There was a young lady who was in the program at Wando. She's first year clarinet. And she was first year in her class academically, of a class of about 900, incredibly smart. She was first year clarinet, not because of anything other than the fact that she just wanted to be the best at everything she could do. And she hurt her arm. And so, the doctor told her she couldn't play her clarinet for 6 weeks. And as a very studious young lady, she came to class, she sat down at the chair, she had her pencil, she was marking her part, marking everything in the part. And the second day I looked over and she had tears coming down her face. And I just walked over there very quietly and said, see me in my office when we're done. And I actually stopped class a little bit early because I wanted to talk to her. And so when I went into the office, she was already in there seated. And I said, Sarah, is everything okay? And she goes, I didn't realize how much I love music until someone told me I couldn't do it anymore. Mm. And I think that is kind of what we experienced with COVID to some extent. So, I don't know if the light bulb will go on for all of them. And I think because of their maturity level, it will go on at different times. But I do think it will happen. And I think if we, like I said, if we are passionate about it, I think that they will get why we are so happy that we are together again. If that makes sense. Yeah.
So there's multiple layers to that. I mean, obviously, having the self-reflection is important for us, and the realization of where we are. One of the things I loved about our conversation with Alfred Watkins was, he always said he met his kids where they were, and then took them little by little. Poco a poco was his magic word there, which I love that. And that's one of the nuggets that I've stolen from the Maestro Watkins. But in your book, the flip side of this is a very practical and deliberate approach to teaching those concepts that are going to really sink in later. As you mentioned, it may take a couple years for us to really realize the value of this. And that's one of the things that I loved about your book. And it made me think, because I am guilty of just painting the big picture, and kind of digging in and getting into the nuts and bolts and the pedagogy stuff. That's one of my areas that I have to work. That's where I really struggle, and I have to put in extra concentration to dig in and do that. But I love what you've done with the concepts of music, the components of music, and I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about that and that approach to what we're experiencing.
Absolutely, because I think you're right. I mean, these two things go hand in hand, and there were two things that fundamentally changed my teaching, and one of them was something called creating a teaching inventory database.
Yeah,
and the teaching inventory database started with the components of playing. So the components of playing are like timing, tuning, tone, technique, balance, spin, articulations, dynamics, phrasing, musicianship, clarity, accuracy, precision, all those things. And then if you take the term like musicianship, then that expands out into expression and nuance and phrasing and style and interpretation, and there are words that go along with that as well. And one of the things that I did, it's a real simple process. Matter of fact, you should do it. It's kind of fun to do. You just take a piece of paper or an Excel spreadsheet, divide it, a column in half, and on the left-hand side, you put what to teach, and you list all those components. And then on the right-hand side, you put how to teach it, and you start developing all those teaching strategies, in a document. And so one of the things that I would do with the components of playing is I would teach the students the components of playing. We would do that during fundamentals time. And by the way, I believe that about 50% of rehearsal time should be spent on fundamentals, but you don't tell your students that. They might all quit if you tell your students that. What you do is you set up an environment for music making where it's collaborative and the light bulbs are just going on. In other words, you're teaching and they're learning and they're answering guided questions, and it's not just all the information going from the podium out. It's like dropping a pebble in water, creating ripples to allow everybody to join in. I call it's like hugging a tree. But one of the things that I do is I will write up on the board like 17 blanks. And first thing I'll do is I'll ask the students, tell me the components of playing. And they will say, timing, tuning, tone, technique, balance, spin, articulations, dynamics, and they make the whole list. And then I ask them who made the list, and they say, we did. And I say, did you realize that you had so many things happening, including the fact that we could take musicianship here and divide this out into a whole nother tree? Or we talked about, skill over here and artistry over here. And they start going like, wow. And then I did this. I would point to a word that was on their list, and I would say, how did we teach it, or how did you learn it? And they might say, I'll just give you an example. Let's say it was phrasing. They put phrasing. And I said, how did we teach it, or how did you learn it? And, a student might say, well, when we play chorales during our fundamentals time, you talk about playing to and away from arrival points, and you encourage us to find that, the intuitive response to the music. And you'll ask us questions about the intuitive response to music, and you'll ask us where we think the phrase is going. And we might even experiment with where the phrase is going, and we might even experiment with the dynamics to and away from the arrival point. And I'll go like, yes, exactly. How did we teach it, or how did you learn it? Sometimes you might get to something and the students will go, it'll be like crickets. You'll point to a word and it'll be like nothing. And you literally, as the teacher, you kind of go like, maybe we haven't covered that like we should. Or sometimes you might say to the students, now guys, that when we do, such and such, and they'll go, oh yeah, you're right. So the teaching inventory database with the what to teach and how to teach. And by the way, after I list the components of playing, I list other things we're responsible for teaching. And that's everything from, instrument care and maintenance to breathing exercises to, So it's it's a pretty long list of things on the what to teach side. And then for me, it was always like a living, breathing document. Matter of fact, I'll tell you this: if people go to www.habitsofsuccess.com and they go to the very bottom of the page, they can actually see my first teaching inventory database that I ever did. And it's there under resources. If people are interested in that process. So I actually believe that is a first step. If wherever they are on the track,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not going to be where they have been, probably, wherever they are on the track, we have to start building capacity and building transfer of concepts by collaboratively making the light bulbs go on, or as Ben Zander says, who's one of my former colleagues, he says, we're striving for shining eyes. So if we can strive for shining eyes because they feel like they're expressing themselves, they're responding to each other. I'll tell you a quick story. It's kind of interesting. So Frank Battisti and I are writing a book together. Now, first of all, I have to tell you, Frank Battisti was my wind ensemble conductor at New England Conservatory. The fact that he asked me to do a project with him was like I literally heard angels singing when he asked me to do a project with him. And
Scott, if Frank Battisti asked me to carry his jacket, I would feel like angels were singing to me. So
yeah, exactly. And the other thing is, this last month he turned 90 years old, which is amazing. And his mind is just as sharp as it could be. But we were having this conversation on Sunday. He and I were having this conversation by phone. And we were talking about how do you tangibly express in words the process of the collaborative process of music making. And he was talking about, he taught at New England Conservatory. He taught at Ithaca College. He was also a student at Ithaca College, when he was a college student. Mm-hmm. He was talking about when he was in college, he sang in the college choir. And he said there was something liberating about the experience because the choir director would always have them memorize their music. And there was something about expressing from your body through memorization that was a little bit different than having music in front of you and trying to transfer that through an instrument. And we were talking about that dichotomy. And so he said that when he was teaching at Ithaca High School, that he would do an assignment with his students where they were assigned to memorize the music, the piece, the work they were playing. He would do it with, no score. He would memorize the score. And the first thing they would do is they would respond to each other musically, without any music in front of them. And then the second thing that he would do is he would have them close their eyes and play without looking at anything. And that led to discussions on how much do you need the conductor? When do you not need the conductor? And then that would lead to discussions of, did you hear someone, express the phrase differently than maybe you had ever heard it before? And then he would ask a question like, did you respond to that? Did you respond to what you heard? And there was this whole dialogue that he had through this experience. And so just hearing him tell the story on this past Sunday and trying to tangibly say, okay, how do we communicate in this project we're working on about the collaborative process of music making? I think it's tied to this idea of post-COVID, just simply being joyous about making music.
Yeah.
And so I believe that. And I think I say, we're in the music business and the people business, and you don't have to pick either or. I think sometimes people think you have to, that it's somehow like this, and it's not. We're in the music business and the people business. The other thing is I think that sometimes I will hear people say, I'm not in the music business. I'm in the people business by using music. I think they're right when they say that, but I don't like to hear it that way because somehow it makes me feel like that we might be only good managers of people. And so I just say it a little bit differently. I say we're in the music business and we're in the people business.
Yeah.
And both are important. So that the whole culture And like I said earlier, my experience has been that when you create this with young people, which is what we need right now, then the music making actually has more depth to it.
Yeah. So, we're kind of coming up towards the end of the hour, and I want to make sure that I honor your time, and I do appreciate you being with us. So, to the directors out there that are, really struggling right now, that are really thinking about next steps, what is some words of advice? And obviously, I know those words of advice would be different with each program and each director and everything, but what are some of the things that you would just kind of leave them with?
Well, I think, first of all, I was talking to a director this past week, and they had experienced attrition. They had experienced numbers issues. And he said to me, I guess I'm going to have to rebuild it the way I built it. And I said, and tell me how you built it. And he said, I built it one student at a time, one relationship at a time. And I thought that was pretty profound. Because I do think, you and I were talking before we came on air, that there's some pretty prominent programs and some pretty prominent directors that I've talked to who are all experiencing this, attrition because of COVID for various reasons. And some of them have just been simple things like school districts who have instituted a virtual academy that have pulled students, out of the ability to play in the band program. And so I think, first and foremost, I think, build it through relationships, one student at a time. I also think that one of the cool things about technology that we've learned in this is, I think, like, for instance, I think high school directors really need to spend more time in the middle schools to start building relationships early. And that means that they may have to go to their administration and say, I need time out of my schedule to go to the middle schools. But you know what? If that's not possible, the kids are used to Zoom now. Get on Zoom and build relationships with those middle school kids. It's not the same as being in person, but if you kind of can perpetuate it that way, when you do see them in person, they already know you, they know your face, they've built those relationships. Students want to belong to something where they feel safe, and they actually, receive these belonging cues, what I call belonging cues. Like I said, my son calls it his tribe,
Right.
And they want to feel like we are safe. We belong to our tribe, and we're going to create something really good together in the future. And I think if teachers can not put unrealistic expectations on themselves or the students, and they can build relationships, and they have a plan, a musical plan for how to get from point A to point B, and just further around the track through, good fundamentals time and picking music where they can truly be expressive. I think this is a good start. And then the other thing, I like I said earlier, I truly believe in that they don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. And I think this is truly an opportunity to love your students, and to relish the opportunity of live music again. Yeah. And it's about musical and personal connection. I really believe that.
Yeah. Yeah, most definitely. I'm thinking about all the things that you said, and I'm looking at my own program, and I'm just thinking about ways that I can take some of those steps myself. What am I doing that I can do better? What type of relationships can I build with the students, with those freshmen that are coming in? What are some of the places that I've dropped the ball with them? We've done a few summer rehearsals. Have I dropped the ball in those times there with building those relationships? And, I will say, I love the spreadsheet that you shared on your site. That was really great. Just to have, like I said, for me, I've got to force myself to kind of break down the different areas and make sure that I'm hitting those things so that all of my kids are getting what they need on an individual level. So I love the approach about having that balance between, building those relationships, but also having a focus and determination to what we're doing in the classroom and a direction for us. So, Scott, thank you so much for joining us. And we were talking before with the new beginning method that you guys have put together, you've actually got a really cool thing happening with that for anybody that's using your program.
Yeah, we do. So we had a new book that came out last year, Habits of a Successful Beginner Band Musician. And in the first year, the best we can tell, about 900 programs used the book. And it looks great for next year as well. And we've just gotten some amazing comments back from teachers who've been using the method book. And so one of my new roles is working at GIA, and one of my job titles literally is relationship builder. And so one of the things that we're offering right now is, if your school district is using Habits of Successful Beginner Band Musician, as a district, that we will do a PD session for you guys. It'll be a virtual PD session unless we can work it out otherwise. But we'll do a PD session for you for free if you're using the method book, because we really want young people, as they get started this year, to fall in love with music and music making. And we want to put tools in teachers' toolboxes and be able to walk with them and build a relationship with them as they make these connections with young people.
That's awesome. That's amazing. So that is 900 different opportunities for you to go and work one-on-one with band directors. That's awesome. Now, Scott, you also are involved with, you've done a lot of guest conducting all over the U.S., and you've also done clinics at various music education conferences. If somebody is interested in bringing you in or talking to you about setting something up, what is the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, the easiest way to reach me actually is my email address, which is srush0@yahoo.com. And just reach out to me personally, and I'm here to help in any way that I can. And if there's anything I can do for you, I'll be glad to do it.
Awesome. Well, Scott, I can't thank you enough. Really appreciate you coming and sharing your thoughts with us, enlightening us, and giving us some guidance as we're weaving our way back into the norm, the new norm, the new positive norm, the opportunity that we have ahead of us. So thank you so much for being a part of us tonight.
Well, Aaron, thank you, and Josh again for the kind invitation. It's been my honor and pleasure.
Awesome. Thanks a lot.